This is Deliberate Action, a podcast for men who take responsibility seriously, men who protect, provide, and lead their families and communities. We have honest conversations about masculinity, leadership, discipline, and culture, because talk without action changes nothing. I'm Dan Major, here with Chris McCully. Today we're going to be discussing leadership in the home. And with that, Chris, if you want to get started, maybe we could go into the topic of managing the home versus leading the home. For example, for myself, there's a difference between managers in the workspace and leaders in the workspace. You can have someone who's a good manager, but a really bad leader. And the same thing applies in the home.
Yeah. Well, first off, hopefully the new audio works because the first one was horrendous. Yeah. Well, what do you think managing in the home looks like?
I would say managing in the home is very similar to a workspace. You have everything functioning on time, kids out the door to school, everything is working the way it should as far as functioning within the home, but it's all on like a timetable. Leadership in the home is more guiding and leading your children, especially, to basically becoming better versions of yourself. You can manage someone and force them to do what you want them to do because it has to be done. Or you can lead someone and motivate them, give them some direction and purpose so that that direction then becomes their goal for themselves so that they get it done without you having to micromanage.
Yeah. And I think when you talk about direction, and this will be good because you have kids and I don't. Direction, in order to have direction, think of it kind of like, we'll compare it to the workspace. A company that doesn't have, and I think core values is a topic for today. So a company that doesn't have core values, doesn't have a mission, you're a number on a chart and you have a job that you're supposed to be doing. There's a difference between that and working for a company where everybody knows what the mission is and everybody knows the intent behind them clocking in and clocking out is more than just I'm the admin person or I'm the sales clerk. It is I am doing this to accomplish the overall mission. So leadership in the home comes from having direction. And as a man, you're responsible for the outcome, period. So if the family is failing, that is on you. If the family is doing very well, that is on you. If you hate going home, that is on you because you don't have any direction or vision for your family. You don't have anything you want to come home to, and you have dropped the ball on the little things. So with core values, I mean, the cohort has core values and it is a standard that is set and expected. Right? My wife and I, we also have core values. And so leading it's not domineering and saying this is the way we're going to go and this is how things are going to happen because I say so. It is understanding that you are a partnership working together to build a family to accomplish a mission, which is to send kids out into the world that know how to be good human beings that contribute. Now, what guides my wife and I's decisions every time we have a very difficult decision, it's not me saying we're going this way because I said so. It's we're going to look at these 7 core values that we outlined together by taking my core values and her core values and bringing them together. We're going to look at those and we're going to weigh this decision against those. And I think that is what leadership looks like. Managing is the day-to-day tasks, and it's a lot easier for people to look at that and think that we're doing fine because the day-to-day tasks are getting done. The bigger decisions, the things that change the course of a child's life or your life and the life of your spouse, those need to get weighed against core values, and at the same time those need to be core values that you and your spouse are living every single day. And if you're not, once again, it is your fault because you are the leader in the home and you need to be setting the example.
I agree with that. That's very well put. I would say the man has to basically own the decisions that happen in the household because it does have to take some teamwork between you and your wife. And like you said, bring your core values together, make sure that they align with each other. Ultimately, the man has to own the household and pass or fail, succeed or fail. It's on him and the decisions that he makes as a leader. And with that, I would say leadership also requires some emotional steadiness and stability If you have someone who's a good leader, a good manager, combines everything into one, but is also an emotional wreck, can't control his own emotions, and everything's kind of up and down, puts him in a good mood one day, bad mood the next day, that can throw everything off for people in the household as well.
Yeah, and what do you think that that does when kids are saying or seeing that you're telling them that these are the expectations, aka the core values, right? These are the expectations that we set, but at the same time, you're an emotional wreck and you're not living up to those expectations yourself. Because we can, it's like kind of like the do as I say, not as I do, right? And
Yeah.
kids are more susceptible to the as I do than they are the as I say.
Yeah. And I would say kids are better at detecting hypocrisy than even adults are. Even though adults like to think that we're more perceptive, it does definitely have an impact on kids when you say one thing and do another, whether that's intentional or not. Same thing with emotional stability. Your stability passes on to your kids or your spouse or whoever you're living with. Emotional instability creates that instability in the child's life, especially when kids are at a young and vulnerable age and they're still trying to figure out who they are. They're learning from you, from your spouse, and growing up, they will tend to take on the traits of their parents. So if you have a parent who is emotionally unstable, the kids likely will end up emotionally unstable as well. So we as adults, as the parents, have a responsibility to our kids to basically handle our own shit, get our emotions together, figure out where we are off. If there's something that throws us down a spiral for a week or two at a time, then we owe it to them to figure out what that is, why we are allowing it to affect us, and then fix it and move on.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would say the same applies for a spousal relation as well between husband and wife.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is something I'm working on. I'm OCD AF, and we got one of our dogs is, so he keeps me up all night. If there's one thing that frustrates me more, it's like these stupid little sounds that like someone it's like someone who chews with their mouth open.
Yep.
Well, our dog Bogey decides that he's going to lick his face all day or lick his paws. You ever seen that meme where it's like the good dog looking at the devil dog and they're like having a conversation and like the good dog's like acknowledging the fact that everybody's asleep and then the devil dog's like telling him you should lick your paws. So like one thing that I'm really having to work on is keeping my frustrations not necessarily to myself but not being so reactive to certain things. And if you're always reactive to certain things, how can you have the respect of the people in your home? Because how can they trust that you're going to be calm, cool, and collected in a real world situation? But it also just demonstrates a lack of security and confidence, I think. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And some of those are pet peeves of mine as well. But yeah, what you said about being reactive definitely has an impact on those around you, not just yourself. I kind of compare it to people who are optimistic, pessimistic, and realistic. A pessimist tends to think that everything's going to go bad, so he doesn't react to anything. Just automatically assumes that it's going to be a worst case scenario. Optimistic assumes that everything's going to go well. And as long as everything goes well, the optimist is happy and delightful and awesome to be around. But the moment something goes wrong, the optimist doesn't know how to react to it. And so then spirals. A realist can take the bad or the good and be happy with either. Realists can react well if something good happens. They can celebrate the wins. But if something bad happens and it's a negative, just look at it, take a step back, be like, okay, that just happened. Let's deal with it and move on. So it all just depends on perspective and reaction.
Yeah, and I think the realist is going to be able to adapt to whatever situations come his way, her way, whatever. And ultimately, when things start to erupt around you, your family is going to look to you and they are going to respond either positively or negatively based on how you're reacting. And let's take an active shooter situation, for example. rounds start going off, they look to you and you're panicking, well, then that's a good cue that they should be panicking. And then you create chaos. They look to you and they see a calm, cool, collected individual who's going to get them to safety or take care of the threat or whatever the situation entails. Okay, that's their cue to trust your guidance. And if you're always reacting to things and out of control, then why the hell would they look to you? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it forces other people to have to take your spot. So that's why we have kids looking to teachers or coaches and stuff like that, because the men don't know how to take control in their home.
Yeah. You'll have kids start to look for mentors outside of the home instead of looking to the father or the mother for that same leadership.
Yeah.
You talked about the cohort values. We already discussed leadership, which is, I believe, the first value. Moving on to excellence in the home. What do you think excellence inside of the home itself looks like?
Well, let me try to break it down with what I think it looks like for me. My goal is to give 100% effort into anything that I attempt, and to do my best to be the best in any area. Now, I'm not going to be Michael Jordan. I'm 5'6", right? But I can work my ass off to be effective in every area of life. So that means how I treat my spouse, how I treat my kids in the future, how I go from that to how I treat my body, my mind, my spirit, how I act at work. Excellence is being the best that you can be in every single area of life. Whatever area of life means to you, like whatever those things that are always around you. So whether it's work or family, whatever, sports, whatever you're responsible for stewarding, I would say, is a better way of putting it. So being the best you can be in all of those areas. Your family and your wife and your kids are going to look to that example, and they are going to take that with them everywhere that they go. So if they see that you're going to work and you're executing and being the best that you can be, and you're coming home and you're not being an asshole, you're still able to execute and be the best that you can be and show them the love and the care that they need, then they're going to do the same thing as they grow up. It doesn't mean that you have to demand that your kid becomes a D1 athlete, but it does mean that maybe the excuses that he's making, you teach him how to navigate those so that they're not excuses, they are opportunities to get better. There are too many parents who are allowing their children to make excuses for anything and everything and saying, no, it's okay. You don't have to be the best at that. Let's try something else. Sure, you can try something else, but finish what you started first. I can't remember who told this story, but his son joined the football team. Week 2, didn't like it, wanted to try something else. He's like, well, no, you started this season. You're going to finish this season. If you want to try hockey next year, great. You can try hockey next year, but you're going to finish what you started. There's another thing that parents do is they like to remove barriers for children, right? So another story, again, I can't remember who told it, but referencing his kid trying to climb up a hill, right? And the parent is back watching the kid, and he's struggling, and he says, it's not going to work. I can't do it. The parent can see that there is another way to get up the hill, and he can say, hey, it's okay. I'll just carry you up the hill. Or he can allow the child to figure out how to problem solve and figure out how to get up the hill, which teaches the kid only that there are multiple solutions to a problem, and it is on you to figure out how to navigate that problem. So I think excellence in the home, just a little recap, is you becoming the best version of yourself and being the best you can be in every area, and that trickles down.
Yeah, I agree. And I always tell my kids, not succeeding, not winning is acceptable if you've given your 100%. But if you've only given, say, 80%, and you didn't win or didn't succeed, that's not acceptable. Wherever you go in life, you're going to run into people who either by skill or circumstance are going to be better than you at something. But as long as you gave your 100% and you know that you gave your all, then that's what matters. Being willing to put yourself out there, and also like having the courage to step forward and put yourself out there. And like you said, with the example with the kid going up the hill, it not only taught him there's another way to do it, but it also gave him the confidence in his own ability that he could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you know you can problem solve if you've never solved a problem?
Exactly. I would say with that, it's equally important to provide predictability within the home for, especially for kids, also for spouses as well. Like it's good for husband or wife to know kind of what to expect. I know spontaneity is one thing as far as romance, but giving predictable rhythms for kids in the home goes a long way to helping them develop as they're growing.
Yeah.
And by that, predictable rhythms could look like having the same schedule every day. It could be having them set up with their own schedule, whether that is having their routine that they go through every morning as far as a wake up routine, off to school, sports, church on the weekends, whatever it is, just having some sort of predictability for them. Randomness in the home tends to create chaos, especially for kids that are growing and trying to learn.
Yeah. How would you say, what would it look like to navigate when those routines are massively disrupted?
So that can be tricky. Like we are a military family, former military family. I was married with one child when I joined the military. So my son went from me being home every day. And then when he's a year old, I'm gone for basic training, boot camp if you're in the Navy or the Marines. And I was gone for months at a time, came back, and then immediately went to Afghanistan. And by the time I came back, he was 3 years old. So for about a 2-year period, my son went from me being home every day to all of a sudden I just wasn't there. And everything was distance related. And then trying to come back and get acquainted with my son and family and reintegrated with the family. That is tough because you disrupted the family structure when I left. And then when I came back, it got restructured again because basically my wife and all military wives have to kind of fill the role of both parents while the one is away. So she had set up the structure in the home and put that predictability in place again after it was disrupted. And then when I come back home, it's further disrupted. So then we have to work through the steps of how I'm integrated. Whereas before my son had to go to mom for everything. Now he's got two parents, or like does one say one thing and one says another thing, and trying to sort out where the authority lies in the home as far as raising the kids together again at that point after being gone. And for the military, it's a constant struggle because you're home, then you're gone, home and gone again. It's probably the most chaotic environment to raise a child. But if you do it correctly and you work on that reintegration when you come back, even though it's disruptive, you can still provide that stability for the child by giving them that kind of on-ramp when one parent goes away and then returns back again.
Yeah, I think that would be a very important lesson because I think that can go either very poorly if you have an organized household and a good relationship with a good spouse that knows how to pick up the slack when you're not home. Because if that's not navigated properly, you can either teach the kid to learn how to navigate chaos correctly, or you can teach them to fear chaos.
Yeah, I agree with that. And internal chaos in the home, I think also reflects on the internal chaos inside of a man. Organized home, not always, but typically indicates that he's at peace with himself and at least organized internally as well.
Yeah. And I think it's very important that, again, as a man, it is your responsibility. However, you and your spouse lead together. You are still the leader of the home. You and your spouse lead together. And that is a very good example of what it looks like when a spouse can, especially military spouses, can pick up the slack of both parents because you have outlined, you guys are still operating on the same vision. So even if you're gone, it's kind of like the assistant to the regional manager or like, the individual, the ATL, when the team leader leaves, ATL's in charge, right? Because you guys have the same vision and all it requires is now you're just integrating with someone new who's moving forward with that same vision, if that makes sense.
And for anyone listening who's not military, ATL is?
Assistant team leader. Team leader and assistant team leader.
Yeah, and so I think we've pointed out that standards in the home don't maintain themselves. It's up to each individual to set the standards and then hold themselves accountable to maintain those standards and set a direction and tone for the home itself, especially when children are involved. Part of that would be providing, I hate the term safe space, but a home really should be a safe and protected zone for your children and for your spouse. And it's up to the man to actually set that tone as well and provide that safe environment, both physically and emotionally.
Yeah, and safe doesn't mean coddling. It doesn't mean a place where
Exactly.
you can, make excuses and it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. Here's your participation trophy. It means you're in a place where you are able to make mistakes. You're comfortable with learning from those mistakes and learning and growing as a family and as one unit. Yeah, this isn't a participation trophy battleground.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's not coddling. I would say it's shielding the family from unnecessary chaos.
Yeah.
From external factors outside of the home. And how would you say a man would go about creating that kind of psychological safety within the home, making them feel at peace, safe physically from like physical threats, but also the environment where they are free to kind of be themselves?
Well, they shouldn't be afraid to tell you things because, like, I think if they're afraid that you're going to get disappointed, it's one thing. If they're afraid that you're going to overreact, that's a totally different thing. If they're afraid that they're going to be disciplined because you're just a heavy hand and they're not allowed to make mistakes, they need, when we talk about safe space, it needs to be a place where they can come to you no matter what and talk to you. Because if they're not talking to you, they're talking to somebody else. They can say, hey, I screwed up here and I don't know how to navigate this. And okay, well, now it's your job as a dad to, instead of saying you're an idiot, maybe help them to navigate that problem so that they can figure out, so that they have a baseline for next time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think part of establishing that baseline is also providing boundaries, which kids will always push the boundaries. And it's your responsibility as a parent to hold firm on those boundaries and provide guidelines for the kids. It keeps them out of jail, keeps them off the pole, whatever analogies you want to use, but also it allows them to explore, be adventurous, try new things within the boundaries that you have established for your home.
Yeah. And you also have to be keeping the standard when you think that they're not looking too.
Yep.
Otherwise, those boundaries mean jack shit.
Yeah, exactly. Boundaries preserve peace within the home when they are upheld by the people who establish them. Can you give an example of how men fail when it comes to protection on an emotional level? Such as, like you had said previously, you stated kids should fear the parents, but not fear overreaction from the parents. The anger, withdrawal, indifference, basically not being present in the home. That's something that we discussed previously, and it's something that I struggle with coming back from military deployments and then trying to reintegrate with my family and being there, but not being present. I would say that is still a failure on an emotional level when you're talking about connecting with kids or spouses as well. It goes both ways with them too.
Yeah, well, I think a self-practice, and I can answer this for myself, is are you well connected with your spouse first? Because that is something that I struggle with, is emotional connection and vulnerability. If you can't be vulnerable with your spouse, who's the most important person in the room, how can you be vulnerable to the children and make them feel like you're someone that they can talk to and communicate with? Some might argue that, it's a little bit easier to be authentic or it's a little bit easier to be vulnerable and emotional with kids. Okay, sure, but is it authentic? If you're not emotionally connected to your spouse, are you authentically emotionally connecting with your children? Because they'll pick that out too. And so if you can start with your spouse, and this is, again, something that I am working on diligently, because it is a struggle with me or for me, to be able to emotionally connect with that person, they'll see that and they will see that you are somebody that they can come to and be vulnerable with and talk to and solve problems with.
Yeah, and I think part of that is establishing an order of priorities in the home and a hierarchy of sorts. Your spouse, and this is, I think, a struggle for all parents everywhere. Your spouse should come first before the children, which is very, very difficult for all families because children take so much time, so much attention. You're trying to keep them alive, trying to keep them from unaliving themselves just through their own actions. But if you can actually make it a focus and put your spouse first, your spouse's needs first, it will help create that stability for the parents at the head of the home. The kids see that, and especially when the kids start getting older, the kids, as they're reaching the age of logic and reason, they see how you treat each other, how you prioritize each other. And I think it sets a good example for them on how they should treat their own spouse, their wife or husband when they grow up and they get married as well, to create the stability and the peace in the home by prioritizing the spouse.
Yeah, and you don't want to get to the end of the 18 years, kick your kids out, and then not know who the person is in the house because you stopped dating, you stopped making them a priority, and it was all about the kids.
Yeah, a lot of marriages end after the kids are gone, and a lot of parents only stay together because of the kids, because of that exact reason. Once the kids are gone, they have nothing in common anymore, nothing to anchor them to each other, and they go their separate ways.
It's changing, and if you're not making an effort to figure out who that new person is every 5 years, you're just...
Yeah. And part of that, especially on the husband side of the equation, protection creates safety in the home and provides some stability, but stability also requires provision. And we now live in a society where it's very difficult for families to get by on single family income. However, I'm still old fashioned, and I do believe that it is primarily the husband's responsibility to provide for the family, even if you do have a wife who is still out there working to help supplement or provide for the family as well.
Yeah, the way of men is to protect and provide, to go out, build stuff, hunt. And sure, if you want your wife to go out and make all the bread, that's fine. But there's a lot of studies that show that there's a lot of respect that is lost when the wife has to go out and make all the money. I'm old fashioned too. I told my wife that when we got married, she didn't have to work anymore. And that's fun to say, but now it's my responsibility to hold that.
To make it a reality.
You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter what happens. It is my responsibility to make sure that is something that is upheld. And if stuff goes crazy, I know that I can come to her and be like, hey, we might need to take up a second income here because, let's say I decide to give everything else up and just focus on business. I can say that to her because I've kept my promise. And she knows that when the time is right, once again, I'll take her out of work. But ultimately, it's up to me.
Yeah. I would say a lot of people confuse consumption with provision. Having the ability to buy things isn't the same as building security. Building security could be having that nest egg in case you get laid off or have an injury and you can't work. Consumption could be buying a new car, buying a new TV, new things, new jewelry, whatever it is. You're providing things, but not necessarily providing that safety net for the family, for the household.
Yeah, a new iPhone's really cool until you can't afford a meal.
Yeah, exactly. How would you say foresight can serve the family? Anticipating crisis or crises, however you say them, plural, before they actually happen, and then planning to remove that pressure from others in the home.
Well, you should absolutely be prepared. I don't think that there's going to be a zombie apocalypse. That doesn't mean that I'm going to not have any food stores in the event of some kind of crisis. Right? So there are certain things that you can what if game and prepare for, but it only serves you as a provider and a protector to be able to look ahead and say that this could happen. I'm going to prepare for it. And if it doesn't, I'm in a better position anyways. So it's The opposite of that would be every dollar that comes in, I'm going to make sure that it goes out so that my kids can be comfortable and they can have the newest phone, the newest clothes, instead of budgeting and putting things aside and investing and making sure that I can weather any storm in the event that it does happen. Not to say that you're leading by fear, but you should still be preparing for certain things. And there's the gluttonous individual, and then there's the prepared individual.
Yeah, and one day we'll go into the conspiracy of the government training events on zombie virus outbreaks.
Oh yeah,
which are a real thing.
Movies that they put out.
But yeah, what you're saying with provision gives resources for the family, but having discipline to determine what to do with those resources sets the pace for the family, provides that stability long term, and also establishes how the home is going to run. Discipline in the home factors into a lot of the other stuff that we've talked about, providing discipline for your kids as far as if they get out of line, if they do something wrong, it puts them right back in the boundaries that we talked about, and provides structure for them, for your spouse, and also for yourself as far as holding yourself accountable for your actions within the home.
Yeah.
What would you say a man's routine, like what kind of impact the routine can have on the family?
I mean, the simplest, maybe you can elaborate on this, but are you organized or are you disorganized? And that's going to trickle down. Everything's going to trickle down from you. So if you have a disorganized routine, maybe you go to the gym, maybe you eat right, maybe you skip that dinner that you told somebody you'd go to. If your routine is organized, you're going to teach your kids how to be organized, and your spouse is going to be organized, and when chaos comes, you're able to navigate it a lot better. Versus being someone who doesn't have a routine. And it's not to say that you have to wake up at 5 a.m. and take your 2-hour ice bath and then go and brush your teeth and then hop into another ice bath and then go run a marathon, and then by 8 a.m. you're cooking breakfast for the family. It's not to say that, but there should be some structure and intentionality behind your routine, because that's going to just trickle down to the kids and the spouse.
Yeah. And I think it also comes down to consistency. Not everyone is going to be a David Goggins doing everything that you mentioned, but a lot of people, especially men, I feel tend to work in burst of effort, burst of energy. It's kind of like having your New Year's resolution. Start off hot and heavy, going through the motions, and then after a few weeks, fall off the boat. And then after a few weeks, few months, realize that you need to get your act into gear. And then you have another burst of effort going through, trying to set the consistency, and then fall off the wagon again. Having maybe just a lighter load as far as what you're trying to accomplish, but staying consistent with it day in, day out throughout the entire year might be more important, especially for people that you're setting an example for, instead of trying to do everything all at once, but it's not a pace that you can sustain long term. Like we talked about kids being able to perceive hypocrisy even better than adults can. What would you say about kids reading discipline through observation and through your actions? And I know this would be, I guess, more from your personal experience because you don't have kids yet, but growing up, what would you say you were able to observe as far as reading discipline in adults around you?
It's very easy to listen to my mom say, you need to eat your vegetables, and then looking at her plate. Those are two very visible, upfront, in your face things. And then asking, well, why don't you have vegetables? Well, that's none of your business. Okay. Like, a kid's not stupid. When that continues to compound, I eventually will learn that, okay, I'll do what I need to do since you're watching. But the second you stop watching, since I know that when everybody else stops watching you're not doing it, well then, okay, it's okay for me not to do it either.
Yeah, it was pretty similar to me as far as diet and exercise. I would say I learned a lot of discipline or about discipline from outside of my home as opposed to being inside the home. Didn't really eat vegetables growing up. My parents' idea of a burrito, and part of this was, money and my parents making do with what we had. A burrito was a large taco shell filled with refried beans and about that thick around. Nothing else, just refried beans. After I grew up and left home, I couldn't eat refried beans for like 2 decades. Like, still not a fan of them.
That's good stuff.
And then like bologna, hot dogs, and mac and cheese as like a daily meal. Yeah. Learned a lot more about health, nutrition, fitness, discipline. A lot of that I learned either outside of the home or after I left home.
Yeah, I think they'll grow up, not all of them, but I did. I grew up and realized that there were certain things that just were the way that they were due, like my parents trying to do the best that they could with what they had. So like we grew up on bologna and ketchup. Dude, I could still eat a bologna and ketchup sandwich today, dude. Or like hot dogs without buns with bread, right? Or like, dino nuggets and mac and cheese. And that was just because Walmart was affordable and that's what they had. But they were also not disciplined enough to say, well, let's just stick to the side aisles, right? So I can look at that and be like, okay, well, it's just, they're doing the best that they can with what they have. Most people won't, though. A lot of people will get out and just continue the habits, and they won't look at that and say, well, maybe I should build some better habits. And so they get put into a position where they either have to grow into new habits, and thankfully, like I wrestled and did sports, and so you can't wrestle and live off of mac and cheese and dino nuggets. Like, it's not going to happen. And so I had that working for me, and I was able to grow up and realize that and then especially joining the Marine Corps, realize that there are certain things that I need to get rid of that I have learned, right? But a lot of people won't. A lot of kids won't grow up and try to learn new habits. They'll just maintain the ones that they learned growing up.
Yeah, and for my parents, a lot of it was lack of knowledge. It was a different time. People didn't give much thought to health and nutrition. And if they did, it was something that they saw on TV, Jazzercise or whatever. And a lot of P90X. A lot of that has carried on, I would say, more so with my brothers in my family than like myself or my family. My parents have now learned better as far as like being disciplined and eating right. My brothers and their kids, not quite so much, even though I think they know the right thing to do as far as setting discipline with eating habits. Moving on to, I would say discipline creates order in the home under normal times. When you're not necessarily under stress, you're just being disciplined, doing the day-to-day routine. Having integrity holds that order together under stress. What would you say are some normal daily stressors that cause people to lose discipline?
A big one is work.
Yeah.
They go to work, they come home, and they choose not to be who they need to be. They choose, oh, well, I worked really long today, so I'm not going to go to the gym. Okay, everybody sees that. Yeah, so work is a big one. I'd say another one is well, work is the only one that I can relate to, so what would be some other ones?
It could be to throw kids into the equation. The kids could have a sports game or something that they have going on. Right now, my family's actually out of town for a basketball tournament. I stayed back because I'm working this week, but on a normal week, they could have 1 or 2 basketball games that we are going to go to and attend, which a normal work day for me is getting up at 2 a.m., working out, driving an hour to get to work. Once I get off because of traffic on I-5, which is wonderful, I have at least a 2-hour commute to get back home. And then if there's a basketball game, then I'm going there to watch my sons play in 2 different games because they're JV and varsity. So that could be another 2 hours. And then after that, then going back home and actually starting your evening. So, and it's similar for a lot of parents who have kids in multiple sport. Families will have a daughter playing volleyball, a son playing soccer, another one playing baseball, or you even have kids who are multi-sport athletes. And so it's year-round, nonstop, constant for those families, for the parents who have to chauffeur them around and go to all of the games. That can very quickly become not necessarily a distractor, but an excuse to not be disciplined.
Yeah. And it'll, yeah.
Yeah, so there are parents who make it work and they can maintain that discipline for themselves while still making sure that their kids are active, healthy, playing in sports, getting them out there. Some parents tend to be kind of overbearing, but getting the kids involved in sports, I think, is important for their development socially, but also personally themselves. Teaches them to work with other people, teaches them hardship. There's so many life lessons that can be taken from sports, especially team sports. Like you said, you did wrestling. Wrestling, I guess, could kind of be team. Like you have multiple, like a whole team that's out there wrestling, but you're an individual who's out there on the mat by yourself, you and one other opponent. But there's still life lessons that can be taken from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe I'll get my kick in the ass when I have kids, but I have long days, and I have experienced the byproduct of allowing long days to be an excuse for complacency, and I would much rather be on the other end of that, where I am in control of what I can control, which is the fact that I still go to the gym regardless, the fact that I am still loving to my spouse, the fact that I still care and show my future kids that I care. I can control all those things. I can't control the 16-hour day. I can't control traffic. I can't control that it's raining. I can't control the fact that the gym closes at 9 or 6 on a Saturday. But I can control that I move anyways when I get home. And that goes back to discipline and the things that we've already talked about, and leading is, this is no longer about you. You don't get to be a bitch. You can be. All power to you, I guess. But your kids are watching, your spouse is watching, the people who live next to you and live with you are watching. And the more that you allow things that you cannot control to dictate how you move through life, I think, and I have experienced, that it is not the best outcome for the kids that are watching you.
Yeah.
And the people that are watching you. And we know everybody has someone in their life that is not going to live past 55 or 60 because of the decisions that they have chosen to make. So you can be that. That's fine. And you can let all these outside circumstances control how you live life, or you can control what you can control and execute no matter what. And your kids will see that, and they will go through life the same way.
Yeah. Having the commitment to maintain that for yourself and your family also plays into your resilience. Regardless of what's going on, you're able to maintain that commitment and, like you said, get home and move, set the example for the kids, and show that you can be resilient regardless of what is happening in life, how busy your day is, how long it is, how hectic. Just having the resilience to keep a consistency throughout life.
Yeah, and I think I like how Alex Hormozy defines resiliency. It is, and I might be misquoting this, but when you get knocked off track, how quickly do you return to baseline is how he defines resiliency. And the only way that you can return to baseline quickly, so some massive life event happens and it throws everything off course. Okay, that's fine. It happens. How quickly do you return back to baseline and get everything back on track? The only way that you can do that effectively is by controlling what you can control and moving forward with that in mind and executing on the things you know you need to execute. Resiliency is very important, especially in today's day and age, because nothing is certain. There's so much going on. We have no clue what's around the corner. And so if you are not controlling what you can control, there's going to be a lot of things that smack you in the face. And it just becomes harder and harder and harder to return back to baseline when everywhere you turn, you're getting hit in the gut.
Yeah. A lot of uncertainty happening right now, both globally and nationally. And then that just kind of keeps filtering down through the states and down to the jobs and back into the home. Well, I would say that's a pretty good stopping point there. And we've covered a lot of good topics. For anyone that's listening, I would just ask that you give it a like, comment, And if there's anyone that you think might be able to get something out of this, if you could share it as well. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.